A boot slammed down on a Harley's kickstand and sent the bike rocking. A hand grabbed a fistful of denim vest and yanked. An old man's shoulder cracked against a rusted gas pump. He didn't fall. He didn't swing. He just breathed slow and let his arms hang loose at his sides. 3 men circled him. Young, big, muscle stacked on muscle. One of them leaned in close and said the old man was about to learn what real violence felt like. The old man clicked his tongue once. Just once. Real soft. Something moved in the shadow of the saddlebag. Low, quiet. One amber eye catching the light. His name was Dutch Kavanagh, 68 years old, and these 3 men had no idea what they'd just cornered. What happened in the next 4 minutes would leave all 3 of them changed for good. Stay with me on this one. Now let me back this up a little, because you need to understand how a quiet old man ended up alone in the dark with 3 men who wanted to hurt him. It was a Tuesday night, late, out past Kingman, Arizona. There's a stretch of the old Route 66 out there that most people forgot about years ago. The interstate took all the traffic. What's left is cracked asphalt, empty desert, and every few miles a gas station that closed down and never opened again. Dutch was riding through on his way home. He'd been to a funeral. One of the old crew, a man he'd ridden with for 40 years, had finally lost his fight with his lungs. Dutch had said his goodbyes, put a shot of whiskey on the grave, and pointed his Harley west. About 20 miles out of town, his tail light started flickering. Then it died. Now Dutch was old school. He didn't like riding a dark bike on a dark road, and he had a coil of wire and a spare bulb in his saddlebag because that's the kind of man he was, prepared. So when he saw the shape of a shuttered gas station coming up on his right, he pulled in behind it out of the wind and set to work. He was a big man even at 68, not tall but wide, thick through the chest and the neck with forearms like a man half his age. His beard was gray, near white now, and his hair was pulled back tight under a bandana. He wore the vest, the colors. Anybody who knew anything knew what those colors meant. Hell's Angels, 50 years in, a lifer. But out here in the dark behind a dead gas station, the colors didn't mean much. There was nobody around to see them, almost nobody. Dutch wasn't alone, he never rode alone. Riding in the left saddlebag, curled up on a folded blanket, was a dog, a Belgian Malinois, lean, dark, all muscle and wire. The dog had one eye. The other was gone, an old scar sealed over where it used to be. His name was Gunner. And Gunner had been asleep the whole ride, the way old soldiers learned to sleep anywhere, but the second that Harley stopped moving, one ear came up. Then the eye opened. Gunner didn't get out, he just watched. That's what he was trained to do. Watch, wait, and listen for the sound only he was waiting for. Now here's the thing about Dutch. The vest told you one story. But it wasn't the whole story. Before he was ever an angel, before he ever swung a leg over a Harley, Dutch Kavanagh was a United States Marine. Force Recon. 2 tour, the kind of tour they don't put in the brochures. And after he came home, he didn't stop serving. He trained dogs, not house pets, war dogs, the kind that jump out of helicopters and clear rooms ahead of the men. He trained them for years for the best units this country has. Dutch had put working dogs into the hands of Rangers, Green Berets, and yes, Navy SEALs. He'd forgotten more about violence than most men would ever learn, but he didn't wear any of that. He wore the vest, and a man in a biker vest, alone, gray-bearded, kneeling by his bike in the dark, well, to the wrong kind of man, that looks like a target. The wrong kind of men were about to arrive. A set of headlights swung off the old highway. A big truck jacked up, engine loud. It rolled around behind the station and stopped, boxing Dutch's Harley against the wall. The doors opened. 3 men climbed out. Young, all of them late 20s, early 30s, fit in a way that's hard to fake. They moved easy, loose, the way men move when they've been trained to move. And they'd been drinking. You could tell by the walk. Not falling down drunk, just drunk enough to feel bulletproof. They'd come from a bar back in town. There'd been words in there, a dispute over a pool game, and a bartender who'd thrown them out before it turned into something. So now they had a whole night's worth of anger and no place to put it. And here, behind a closed gas station, they found an old man in biker colors alone. Dutch heard them coming. Of course he did. He didn't stand up right away. He finished twisting the wire onto the bulb, tested it, watched the tail light glow red, and only then did he rise, slow, wiping his hands on a rag. "Evening," Dutch said, just that. The three of them spread out without even thinking about it. One drifted left, one right, one stayed center. That's a formation. That's training. Dutch clocked it in half a second, and something in his chest went cold and quiet, the way it used to before a door got kicked in. These weren't bar drunks looking to shove a stranger. These men knew how to corner a target. That changed things. The one in the center smiled. He was the biggest of the three, a thick blonde kid with a jaw like a shovel. "Nice bike, old man," he said. "Be a shame if something happened to it." Dutch said nothing. He set the rag down on the seat. The stakes here were simple, and Dutch understood them better than the three young men did. He was one man, 68 years old, alone, 20 miles from town, with no cell signal and no witnesses. Three trained fighters had him boxed against a wall. If this went bad, nobody would find him until morning, if then. He knew all of that. And he did the math the way he'd done it 100 times in worse places than this. He gave them the only thing he had left to give. A chance. "Boys," Dutch said, and his voice was easy, almost gentle. "You've had a rough night. I can smell it on you. Get back in your truck and go home. Nobody has to remember tomorrow that this happened." The blonde one laughed, and that's the moment. That's the moment it all turned. Because a smarter man might have heard something in that easy voice. A warning underneath the calm, but this kid didn't hear it. He heard an old man begging. That's what he wanted to hear. "You hear that?" he said to his friends. "Grandpa's giving us permission to leave." He stepped in close, chest to chest with Dutch, looking down at him. "That's cute. But see, we didn't come back here to leave. We came back here to teach somebody a lesson. And you're it." He reached out and shoved 2 fingers hard into Dutch's chest. "Now I want you to understand something. Up to this point, everything could have been walked back. A shove, some ugly words. Men do stupid things when they drink, but what happened next crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The blonde one grabbed Dutch's vest, the colors, in his fist and yanked. He slammed the old man back into the gas pump, that same crack of shoulder against steel. Then he cocked his other fist back and he said the words, the ones you heard at the start. "You're about to experience real violence, old-timer." And here's the thing about all of it. All that noise, all that threat. The whole time, Dutch never took his hands out from his sides. He never raised a fist. He never reached for the knife on his belt, and there was a knife, believe me. He just looked up into that young man's face and he did one small thing. He clicked his tongue, once. It was such a small sound. Under the wind and the truck engine still ticking and 3 men breathing hard, you'd think nobody would even hear it, but somebody heard it. Somebody had been waiting his whole life to hear it. In the shadow of the saddlebag, Gunner stood up. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. A trained dog doesn't warn you. That's the whole point. He flowed out of that saddlebag and hit the ground without a sound, low to the concrete, ears flat, that one amber eye locked on the man holding his handler. 65 pounds of nothing but purpose. He didn't rush in. He stalked 2 steps forward and stopped, dead still, muscles wound tight as a spring. The man on the right saw him first. His face changed. Hey," he said. "Hey, there's a dog, man." The blonde one still had his fist up, still had Dutch's vest in his hand, but he turned his head to look. And for the first time that night, something flickered behind his eyes. Not the dog itself. Something about how the dog was standing. How quiet it was. Any man who spent time around real working dogs knows the difference between a pet that's scared and a weapon that's loaded. This dog was loaded. Dutch spoke very softly. "I'd let go of the vest now," he said, "while letting go is still your idea." Slowly, the blonde one opened his fist. He stepped back. All three of them took a step back, and now they were the ones half-circled, with the wall behind the old man and the dog low in front of him. Nobody moved. For a long few seconds, nobody moved at all. The blonde one let out a breath and forced a laugh, but it came out thin. "It's just a dog," he said, more to his friends than to Dutch. "It's an old man and a one-eyed dog, come on." But he didn't step forward, and his friends didn't either. Dutch could have ended it right there. He could have sent Gunnar in and been on his bike inside a minute, but he didn't want to, because underneath the anger he'd caught a couple of details that stopped him cold. The way these three moved together, a tattoo on the forearm of the one on the left, half hidden, but Dutch knew that emblem. He'd have bet his Harley on what these boys did for a living. And that changed everything, because Dutch didn't want to hurt them. He wanted them to walk away and never know how close they'd come. So he tried one more time. "Go home," Dutch said. "All three of you, this is your last free one." And it worked. It actually worked. The one on the right tugged the blonde one's sleeve. "Let's go, Trey, it's not worth it, come on." The three of them started backing toward the truck, slow, keeping their eyes on the dog. The blonde one, Trey, spat on the ground, tried to save some face, muttered something about a lucky old man, but he backed up. He got to the truck door. He put his hand on it. Dutch let out a long breath he'd been holding. His shoulders came down an inch. He clicked his tongue twice, soft, and Gunnar eased back a step, still watching, but the spring came out of him. Dutch turned to his bike. He reached down and picked up his rag off the seat, and he started coiling the spare wire back into a loop to stow it away. Just an old man cleaning up his tools, getting ready to ride home. It was over. That's what it looked like. That's what everybody in that lot believed. Even the dog dropped his head half an inch. It was not over, because as Trey pulled the truck door open, the dome light came on inside the cab. And in that light, Dutch caught a flash of something on the back seat. Dark metal. A shape he knew as well as he knew his own hands. It was a pistol, and Trey wasn't getting in the truck. He was reaching into it. "Hey," the one on the right said, suddenly nervous. "Trey, don't." "Trey." But Trey came up out of that truck with the gun in his hand, and the whole night changed shape in a single second. Here's what I need you to understand, because this is the part that mattered. Up until that gun came out, this was a bad night. 3 drunk fools shoving an old man. Ugly but survivable, the kind of thing men walk away from with a bruise and a story. The second that pistol appeared, it stopped being that. It became something else entirely, because now there were witnesses. Now 3 trained men had assaulted a stranger, threatened him, and one of them had drawn a weapon, 20 miles from town with no cameras and no cell signal. And drunk, scared men who have gone that far start doing math of their own. The math that says the only way this doesn't follow them home is if the old man never talks, if there's nobody left to tell it. Dutch saw all of that on Trey's face in the light of that dome bulb. He'd seen it before on other faces in other countries. The moment a man decides that the cleanest way out is straight through you. "Trey, put it down," the third one said, the quiet one who'd stayed back the whole time. His voice had gone flat and careful. "Man, put it down right now." Trey didn't put it down. He swung it up and pointed it at the old man's chest, and his hand was shaking. And a shaking hand on a trigger is the most dangerous thing in the world. "You don't say a word about this," Trey said. "You hear me? Not one word. This never happened. You just rode off and had an accident on the highway. Old guys do it all the time." And that right there, that threat, that's the whole story turning over. It wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't about a pool game or a shove. It was about whether Dutch Kavanaugh lived to see the sunrise. I'm going to tell you exactly how it went. But first, if you've made it this far, if you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now wondering how one old man gets out of this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's the only thing that keeps stories like this one coming. Now let's finish it. Dutch stood very still with the pistol pointed at his heart. He didn't put his hands up. He didn't beg. He looked at Trey and then he looked at the other two, and when he spoke, his voice had changed. All the easy gentleness was gone out of it. What was left was flat and cold and very, very quiet. "Son," he said, "that's a SIG you're holding. Nice weapon. But your fingers inside the guard and your hands shaking and you're standing 8 feet away, which means when you flinch, and you will flinch, you're going to pull that shot low and left. You'll gut shoot me. I won't die quick. And while I'm bleeding out, this dog is going to be at your throat before your ears stop ringing, and your 2 friends are going to be running for that truck. And every one of you is going to spend the rest of your natural life in a federal cell. All over a tail light." The quiet one, the third SEAL, took a step sideways away from Trey. "He's right," he said. "Trey, look at me. He's right. Put it down." But Trey was too far gone. Fear had him. "Shut up," he said. "Shut up, all of you." The gun swung between the old man and the dog, and the old man watched it swing, and I want you to notice, Dutch never once looked at the pistol after that. He looked at Trey's eyes, because the eyes tell you before the hand does, every time. Now, here is where 2 tour of force recon and 30 years of training war dogs came together in about a second and a half. The gun swung toward Gunner. That was the tell. Trey had decided in his drunk and frightened brain to deal with the dog first. His eyes cut to the animal, his shoulder turned, the barrel started to track down and to the left toward that low dark shape on the concrete. Dutch clicked his tongue, sharp, twice fast. A sound Gunner hadn't heard in years but had never once forgotten. It meant one thing: take him. And here is the thing people don't understand about a real war dog. You think of speed and you think fast. Multiply that. Gunner didn't run at Trey. He arrived at Trey. 65 pounds came off that concrete in a single flat line, and the gun went off. One crack that went wide into the dark because Gunner was already inside the arc, already past the barrel, and those jaws closed on the wrist behind the gun with a force that can crack a broomstick. Trey screamed. The pistol spun away across the concrete and skidded under the truck, and Dutch moved. For a big man of 68, he moved like water going downhill. He didn't go for Trey, the dog had Trey. He went for the quiet one, the third SEAL, the dangerous one, the one whose head was still clear. Dutch closed the 8 feet before the man's hands even came up, hooked a boot behind his ankle, drove a forearm across his collarbone, and put him flat on his back on the concrete hard enough to empty his lungs. Then Dutch had a knee on his chest and one thick hand pinning his jaw to the ground, and it was done, that fast. The one on the right, the nervous one, didn't fight at all. He backed straight into the gas pump with both hands up, palms out, shaking his head. I'm out, I'm out, I'm out," he was saying. "I never touched you, man. I swear to God I'm out." That left Trey on his knees screaming with a Belgian Malinois locked onto his wrist and that one amber eye rolled up watching his face. Gunner wasn't tearing, that's the thing. A trained dog holds. He had Trey's wrist in a grip like a bench vice, not ripping, just holding, waiting because that's what he'd been told to do. One more word from Dutch and it would be different. Trey knew it. You could see he knew it. He'd stopped fighting and gone completely still, because some animal part of his brain had finally figured out that stillness was the only thing keeping his hand attached to his arm. "Don't move," Dutch told him, not even loud. "He'll match you. You go still, he goes still. You pull, he pulls. Understand me?" Trey nodded fast, tears on his face now, all the tough gone out of him. Dutch looked down at the man pinned under his knee. Up close in the truck's headlights he could see it clear now. The kid was maybe 30, And there on the side of his neck, half under the collar, was a small tattoo, a trident, an eagle, an anchor, a pistol, and a trident. Dutch had been right. He'd been right the whole time. "You're a SEAL," Dutch said quietly. It wasn't a question. The man under his knee went still in a different way. His eyes came up to Dutch's face. "All three of you," Dutch said. "Team guys, aren't you?" He let out a slow breath through his nose. "I knew it. I knew it the second you spread out on me. God help me, I knew it, and I still gave you 3 chances to walk away." "Who are you?" the man on the ground said. And there was something new in his voice now. Not fear exactly, the beginning of a terrible suspicion. Dutch eased the pressure off the man's jaw just a little. Then he said the thing that turned that whole parking lot inside out. "My name's Dutch Kavanaugh. Before I ever put on this vest, I did 2 tours with Force Recon. And after that, for 30 years, I trained the working dogs that go downrange with your teams. That dog on your buddy's wrist. He's retired now. But before he lost that eye, he did 4 deployments. 2 of them were with the teams, with the same command you serve in." He nodded toward Gunner. "There's a good chance, son, that dog cleared a building ahead of men who trained you. So when I tell you that you were about to experience real violence tonight, you understand now. I wasn't the one who was going to be handing it out." Nobody said a word. The wind moved across the empty lot. Trey knelt in the dirt with the dog on his arm and cried without any sound. The nervous one still had his hands up against the gas pump. And the man under Dutch's knee just stared up at the old biker with the gray beard and the colors, and you could watch it land on him, the full weight of what they had done, and to whom. Dutch took his knee off the man's chest and stood up. He put out a hand. The SEAL looked at it for a second, then took it, and Dutch pulled him to his feet like he weighed nothing. "Get his gun out from under the truck," Dutch said. "Slow. Then drop the mag and clear it and hand it to me, but first. You know how, do it." The quiet one did exactly that. He knelt, reached under the truck, came up with the SIG, dropped the magazine into his palm, racked the slide to eject the round in the chamber, and held the empty pistol out to Dutch. "Grip first, the way you hand a weapon to a man you respect." Dutch took it, checked it himself out of 30 years of habit, and set it on the seat of his bike. Then he clicked his tongue, one long soft note, and said, "Gunner, Lowe's." And the dog let go, just like that. Gunner opened his jaws, backed off Trey's wrist, and trotted over to sit at Dutch's left boot, tongue out now, looking for all the world like somebody's happy pet, one amber eye blinking up at his handler. Trey collapsed back on his heels, holding his wrist to his chest. It was bruised, maybe cracked, the skin dented where the teeth had held, but it wasn't torn. There wasn't a drop of blood on the concrete. That's control. That's the difference between a dog and a weapon that knows exactly how much to give. For a long moment, the 3 young men just stood there in the headlights, and Dutch let them stand. He wanted it to sink all the way in. Then he walked over to Trey, and he crouched down in front of him, old knees popping, and he looked at the kid at eye level. "You want to know the part that ought to keep you up at night?" Dutch said, gentle again now, almost kind. "It's not that you lost. It's that you drew down on a stranger over a busted tail light. You put your whole life, your team, your brothers, everything they poured into you, you put all of it on the line to hurt an old man in a parking lot. That's not what they made you for. You know that. You knew it before you ever got out of that truck." Trey couldn't look at him. He stared at the ground and nodded. "I'm not going to call anybody," Dutch went on. "You hear me? No cops, no base. Nobody's going to hear about this from me. Not because you don't deserve it, because I've been where you 3 are standing. I've come home from a bad place with a head full of noise and no good way to put it down, and I've done stupid, ugly things I thank God nobody ever wrote down." He put a hand on Trey's shoulder. "But this is the last time. You understand me. A man doesn't get many nights like this where the worst thing that happens is a bruised wrist. Next old man you corner behind a gas station might not have a dog. He might just have a gun of his own and no reason left to give you a chance. You lived through the mercy tonight. Don't waste it. He stood up. His knees popped again. He looked at all three of them. Now clean yourselves up and get in that truck and drive home slow. And don't you ever let me hear that you did this to somebody else. The quiet one, the third SEAL, the one Dutch had put on his back, stepped forward. He stood up straight, and something in the way he held himself had changed completely. He wasn't a drunk in a parking lot anymore. He was a young man in front of an old soldier, and he knew the difference. "Master Chief," he said, though he had no way of knowing Dutch's rank, it was just the highest thing his mouth could reach for. "I'm sorry. On behalf of all three of us. That was the worst thing I've ever been a part of." He swallowed. "You could have killed us, all three, easy, and you didn't." "I know I could have," Dutch said. "That's why I didn't. Anybody can take a life, son. It's giving them back that's hard." He turned and swung a leg over his Harley. Gunner didn't need to be told. He flowed up into the saddlebag, curled onto his blanket and put his chin down, one eye still open, watching the three men until the very end. Dutch keyed the engine and it caught with that low, heavy rumble that rolls out across the desert. He flicked on the tail light. It glowed steady and red in the dark, the whole reason he'd stopped in this cursed lot to begin with. Before he pulled out, the quiet one asked one more thing, almost shouting it over the engine. "The dog," he said. "You said he did 2 deployments with the teams. What was his name on the teams? What did they call him?" Dutch smiled for the first time all night. He reached back and laid a hand on the dog's dark head. "They called him the same thing I do," he said, "Gunner. And there's men walking around alive today, men with families, men with kids they get to tuck in at night, who owe every one of those nights to this dog going through a door first. So maybe show a little respect next time something old and quiet gives you a way out. Old and quiet usually means it survived a lot worse than you." And then he rolled out of that lot, onto the cracked old highway, the tail light steady and red, and the sound of the Harley faded off into the dark until there was nothing left but 3 young men standing in their own headlights, sober now, all the way sober, staring at the empty road. They stood there a long time. Nobody said much. Trey held his wrist. The nervous one finally sat down on the truck's running board and put his face in his hands. And the quiet one just kept looking down the highway where the old man had gone, long after the tail light disappeared. Because here's the thing they finally understood, standing in that empty lot in the middle of the Arizona night. They had spent years becoming dangerous men. They'd earned it the hard way, the way few men ever do. And they'd walked up on a gray-bearded old biker fixing a tail light, and they'd been certain, absolutely certain, that they were the most dangerous thing in that parking lot. They were not even close. The most dangerous thing in that lot had let them live, had given them 3 chances before it ever moved, had held a dog's jaws off a torn artery with a single soft word. Real violence, it turned out, wasn't the loud part. It wasn't the threats and the shoving and the shaking gun. Real violence was the quiet old man who never once raised his voice, because he never had to. The men who are truly capable of it are almost never the ones talking about it. Trey went to the VA a few weeks after that night, not because of the wrist, because of the other thing, the noise in his head he'd been drowning in a bottle. His 2 friends drove him there and waited in the parking lot. None of them ever told the story to anyone on the teams. They kept the old man's mercy the way you keep something sacred. And somewhere out west, an old man and a one-eyed dog kept riding the empty roads, the tail light glowing steady and red behind them, the way it should. Dutch never told the story either. He didn't need to. He'd said the only thing that ever needed saying, crouched down in the dirt with his hand on a young man's shoulder. You live through the mercy tonight. Don't waste it. That's the whole thing right there. That's the story. Some men spend their whole lives trying to prove how hard they are. And then one night in the dark, behind a place the world forgot, they meet the real thing. And the real thing looks them dead in the eye and gives them a chance to walk away. The smart ones take it.